This man came to Jesus. He was a centurion. He came to Jesus and he said, Jesus, my servant got an issue. My servant got an issue. Jesus said, but let's go. He said, no, Jesus, I don't want you to go. He said, because, my house is not worthy of you. He says, I recognize you. I recognize who you are, how great you are. He says, I got a good house. Problem in my house. The problem in my house. The problem is that, I think too great of you to allow you to come. Man. He says, I'm a man under authority. He says, I have servants under me. He says, and I say to one servant, go, and he go. And I said, one servant come. And he said, Jesus, so I understand the power of words. He says, when I say to a servant go, that servant know he got to go, else he got fired. When I say to a servant come, he know he got to come. And so I understand the power of words. He said, now I am in control in my house. And when I say A happens. B happens. And I know that you are in control in your house. So I don't need you to come. All I need you to do is speak the word. And if you speak the word, I leave here and go home because I know my servant should live. If you say live, I don't need to bother you no more. You don't need to go with me. I know that whatever you say must happen because your word got power. Hello, somebody. And so Jesus becomes the creative word of God. But listen to this. Let's journey with me. After God spoke in Genesis, the world became beautiful. So much so until God looked over his handiwork and said, it's good. Sometimes you do something, you look at you. God looked over the trees and the flowers and the birds and the bees and everything that he had created. God said, boy, it's good. He said it's good, because he had created and he had formed and he had brought beauty. The reality is that God wants to say the same thing over your life and my life. He wants to be able to do a work in our life that he can say, it is good. It is good. Jesus is the word of God, has the power then to turn a life that the enemy have ruined. A life that the enemy have empty of peace and joy. A life that the enemy have depressed and discouraged. A life that the enemy have ruined. God is able to work in that life and bring peace and joy and be able to look over your life and say, it is good. Tell your neighbor, God is able to do it in your life. God can do in your life and in my life what no counselor can do. He can do what no spouse can do. He can do what no doctors can do. In fact, there are some situations that folks go through that make the doctor scratch their head, them look to the textbook, make them wonder what's going on, and God steps in and steps in, things change. And so God can do some stuff in your life that no doctor can do. He can do what no pastor can do. He can do what no friend can do. And all he got to do is allow his word to come in and change some stuff in your life. Well, Jesus is the word of God. And when the word comes into your situation, the word can change your situation. When the word comes to your circumstance, the word can change your circumstance. The word come into your marriage, he can change your marriage. The word comes into your health, he can change your health. The word come into your home, he can change your home. The word come into your family, he can change your family. The problem is that we too crazy to let the word in. We got to understand that if we want God best, we got to embrace the word of God. Well, brother preacher, who is the word of God? Well, he is the King of Kings. He's the wonderful counselor. He's the mighty God. He's the Prince of Peace. Well, brother preacher, who is the word of God? He was born of the Virgin Mary. He rode on another man's donkey. He worked in another man's carpenter shop. He turned water into wine. Well, brother preacher, who is the Word of God. He's the man who prayed in another man's garden, the man who preached from another man's boat. Well, brother preacher, who is the Word of God? He's the man who was tried in another man's court. Who is the Word of God? He's the man who was crucified so that another man can go free. Well, brother preacher, who is the Word of God? He's the man who was crucified on a cross. Well, brother preacher, who is the Word of God? He is the man who was buried in another man's tomb. Well, brother preacher, who is the Word of God? He is the man who sits high interceding for another man. Well, brother preacher, who is the Word of God? He is most definitely, positively, conclusively the Son of God, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. He can change your life and turn